In Live on Live today, I'm joined in the studio by Sophie Ancel, who's a journalist and co-author of First They Erased Our Name, and that's a first-hand testimony of the hardships faced by Myanmar's Rohingya community, as recounted by Habib ur Rahman, himself a Rohingya from Arakan, which is currently known as Rakhine State, who took the difficult decision to leave the country that refuses to legally recognise his Muslim minority back in 2009. Sophie, you're very welcome to the programme today.
Thank you.
Now, first and foremost, Sophie, just tell us, how did you meet Habib ur Rahman?
I met Habib ur Rahman in 2006 while I was investigating on Burma persecution on minorities. I just came back at that time. I came back from Burma and I spent a lot of time in Arakan State, a lot of time with the Rakhine Buddhists and went to the Rohingya village. And I arrived in Malaysia, where a lot of Rohingya were escaping. And that's where I met Habib in 2006. And he had a lot to say at that time. He was already demonstrating in front of embassies to try to raise the voices of Rohingya that were in Arakan on the persecution that they were facing.
So this indeed is 12 years ago. The plight of the Rohingya has come to the fore in the last year, with this mass exodus leaving Rakhine State, going into neighbouring Bangladesh because of a clampdown against them. But in your book, First They Erased Our Name, Habib ur Rahman describes the hardships and humiliations that he and his community have suffered specifically over the 80s and 90s. But he himself was also a vociferous advocate, a pro-democracy advocate and supporter of Aung San Suu Kyi against the military junta when she was still under house arrest. And this is the Nobel Peace Prize winner, of course, and she was under house arrest for years. But now, as Myanmar's state councillor, or de facto leader, does he feel betrayed by Aung San Suu Kyi?
Yes, I think, the book is really about, his testimony was important to him to really show how much persecution there was since a long time. So there was so many signs to say there that the Rohingya are going under an ethnic cleansing and genocides for a long time. There was operations since 1960s, in 1978, in 1991, in 2000. There has been so many signs for the world to act and for Aung San Suu Kyi as well to be aware that the Rohingya are facing extreme persecutions. So for the Rohingya to get back the peace, they always have believed very much into Aung San Suu Kyi, and actually they were the hope. Aung San Suu Kyi was their hope. Habib demonstrated for Aung San Suu Kyi freedom for many, many years. He took risk for her, and like many Rohingyas, when he was in Malaysia, because demonstration was not an easy thing. So since 2012, when she actually made a world tour to get all her prizes and talk with international community, that was when it started to become very difficult for Rohingya to see that the Nobel Peace Prize was actually not talking about Rohingya persecution, when actually the big massacre started then.
Sure. Now, the other question that has to be asked is, the Rohingya in Rakhine State, in Myanmar, they're not recognized. They have no status. They are stateless people. But let's also look at the region. We have regional powers, such as their Muslim majority powers, such as Malaysia and Indonesia. A little over 10 days ago at the ASEAN meeting on the March 17th, Malaysia's leader Najib Razak warned that the issue of the Rohingya could threaten national and regional security, since the community that is being victimized could fall prey to extremist groups such as Islamic State. Is this a concern for people such as Habib ur Rahman, who have escaped Myanmar, that this radicalisation could actually happen?
I think for now, for most of the Rohingya, this is not really the subject. The subject is they are actually suffering extremism right now in Myanmar. So the extremism and radicalization is coming from the Buddhist community, which is probably a big issue, as you can see also what happened in Sri Lanka. So we can always think, in the future, but let's also see at what happened in the present. And radicalization of Buddhism is a big threat for the region as well. If you look at Sri Lanka and Myanmar, and it already kills a lot of people.
Now, indeed, focusing on that, Rakhine State, to reiterate again, there was an exodus of some 700,000 people who went into neighbouring Bangladesh since August of last year. Now, witnesses, including the United Nations, have called this ethnic cleansing, pure and simple, but the Rohingya call it genocide. Now, can you go as far as to say that Aung San Suu Kyi is presiding over an actual genocide, but she's also seeing it being perpetrated by a military she doesn't control?
Yeah, I will say, like other Nobel Peace Prize, like Shirin Ebadi recently, that this is a genocide. Besides the Rohingya, a lot of activism on people who have been working on the case are calling genocide. The special envoy Yanghee Lee at UN also says that there is a lot of signs that is coming to a genocide. So that is why also Habib and the Rohingya community asked referral of Aung San Suu Kyi to the International Criminal Court. And so, sorry, the second question was?
It's basically now, is Aung San Suu Kyi presiding over a genocide that is being really employed or being perpetrated by a military that she doesn't command?
Well, I guess Aung San Suu Kyi has become a political person rather than a human rights person. And in 2012, she had the choice to make, but of course, she was the military have used her as a shield to do what they are doing currently. But she also, she took the choice to be that shield, and for 5-6 years almost today, she has been a very big shield for covering what is happening in the Arakan state, and she has not permitted the international community to go inside Arakan state to make proper investigation.
Now, let's take a look at the regional powers again. Bangladesh, which has its own problems as an impoverished country, has really absorbed the majority of these Rohingya that have fled Rakhine State. But they've also, Bangladesh itself has its own problems. But let's look at the regional superpowers. We have India and we have China, who are right beside each other, with Myanmar sandwiched in between. How have they reacted to Myanmar's clampdown against the Rohingya?
Yes, I think the issue is there is not very much of reaction on this issue, and probably also there is money, economic, and energetic resources in the area that that have their impact on how the countries around are reacting to the tragedy of the Rohingya, and actually are not reacting. Yeah. So yes, that's a big issue. Is that not enough countries are really showing much concerns.
The question that one would ask is that what are they afraid of? These are big countries. This is like India, or have they just? It doesn't concern them. If the Chinese are happy to get their logging rights up in the north, or India just doesn't want to rock the boat too much because of Bangladesh next door. What is it that is keeping them so silent, in your opinion?
I don't think the Rohingya have many. I've got much empathy from other countries, and currently, because Arakan state proved to be a place with a lot of energy, and what happened today is all the Rohingya have been wiped out, and you already have new settlements of Buddhist or military bases that have taken place on where the Rohingya were
They're being moved
living.
in. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I guess there will be a lot of economic new developments happening, and that will give us also some answers of why this genocide has happened and accelerated so much recently, and who will take benefits.
Exactly, where their loyalties lie and where the actual, where it will all crumble or not. Now, just back to your book that is now First They Erased Our Name. Habib Uraman, who is recounting his first-hand story in this book, he himself was saved from a sinking ship back in 2009 off the coast of Australia, I believe. Or was it nearer maybe to home? He himself took that decision to leave Myanmar, and then eventually was put into one of these detention centres.
Well, yeah, basically what happened is, so Habib left Burma early in 2000, and he's been escaping from Arakan state and from all the persecution in Arakan state from the restriction for education and for torture and arrest in prisons in Burma. But the thing is, once you escape Burma as a Rohingya, you unfortunately do not have much of a peace behind the fence, like behind the frontiers. So once you arrive in Thailand, he's been a slave in a Thai fishing boat, and then he's been arrested several times in Malaysia, and he's been put in detention, and he's been put again to human traffickers. So a lot of Rohingya have to face these conditions. So unfortunately, they don't get many chances to be resettled in other countries, like other minorities will have that chance. So for Rohingya, there is not much hopes and trying to go further and further to finally find a place. So he took the chance to go to Australia by boat again, because Malaysia was a danger to him as well. And so yeah, his boat was in very difficult conditions, and he was arrested by Australian government and put in detention for 3 years. Today he's still stateless, like so many Rohingyas today around the world are stateless. I would probably estimate that 80% of Rohingya, wherever they are in the world, are stateless.
And about the detention centres themselves, or the Australian-run detention centres, which have now in themselves, their own right, become notorious. Was he on Manus Island or one of these places that have been leased off Papua New Guinea?
No, Habib was taken to Christmas Islands first, and then he was transferred to Darwin Detention Centre, where he spent a lot of time, and sent to Melbourne. So, but yeah, the conditions of being a stateless person, being a refugee, and still not being able to know when you will be able to get out, and feeling like a criminal is very, very tough, especially when you're fighting for human rights and for democracy and for liberty for your people. And especially when in 2012, Habib was actually in detention center, and he get all these calls from the people in Arakan state, from the Rohingya, saying they're trying to alert the world that their villages are wiped out, that the people are getting killed, that so you have 10,000 of people who have been killed, but we get numbers of 100 people officially, because no one got the information except the Rohingya in exile, like himself in detention.
And just very finally, what do you want to see done to help the Rohingya in the coming years? What do you think is the most important first step?
I think the first step, of course, you have very little Rohingyas left in Myanmar, but those people, they deserve protections. So I think we have to urgently bring some protection there, and there must be access to Arakan state urgently, also to give, to document what has happened, how many people have died, how many mass graves. Now it's already been 5 or 6 years, but still they probably have some proof, and we need to find those proofs. Secondly, there is all these people in Bangladesh, 1 million people. I think the world countries should provide assistance to Bangladesh as well, and to resettle some Rohingyas in emergency, because I I don't think repatriation right now is a solution, you know.
Indeed, and I mean that was put on offer, but it seems like it would be a very tough decision to make to go back to these.
I mean, not in the condition where Arakan is full of criminal, of people who have committed crimes against those people. You don't want to bring back the victims in the mouth of the butcher.
Absolutely.
You know? But you need to make. Of course, it would be great to have the Rohingya to have their land and be back home, but you have to get protection.
Okay, well, on that note, Sophie Ancel, we're going to leave it there. Sophie Ancel, journalist and co-author of First They Erased Our Name, which is published in French by Éditions de la Martinière, and that in French is known as D'abord, ils ont effacé notre nom. Thank you very much for joining me on the programme today.
Thank you.